What's going on, everybody? Evan here with Evan's Detailing and Polishing. What do I have sitting right here? I have got 6,000 RPM full speed grinders, except for this little fella right here. What I have is, this video is going to be about the high-speed grinders. Now, yes, they are grinders, and for those of you that are like, I bought a grinder and it didn't last very long, understand that these 9-inch buffs with fabric have a lot of torque. Grinders are made for cutting something and setting aside. They're not made for grinding all day long. And our industry is so small and so unique that most grinding companies, whether it be Makita, Milwaukee, DeWalt, do not tailor to the metal polishing industry. Why? Because all that fabric gets in there and clogs everything up, and it's just a ton of torque all day long. They're just not made for that. But what I will tell you is, these are 7-inch grinders. These are 9-inch grinders. Now, Makita makes a 9-inch. DeWalt, this is considered their 7 to 9-inch. What I will tell you is I prefer the Makitas. Why? First off, they're more ergonomic, they fit into more places. Second off, they're lighter, about 2 pounds lighter. And for those of you that are polishing all day, you will notice 2 pounds makes a huge difference on your arms. Okay? So, you got the Makita. This Milwaukee, I consider this the holy grail of grinders. They're very, very difficult to find. But this is a 0 to 6,000 RPM grinder. Now, if you watch some of my previous podcasts with some of the polishers that we've talked with, oftentimes I talk about the old Black & Decker grinder. That old Black & Decker grinder ran 5,000 RPM. That thing was all aluminum body, it was super heavy, it was brushless, it was a great grinder. But that grinder was heavy as hell. Now, this Milwaukee is the same thing. They're very heavy machines. So is this DeWalt and this 9-inch Makita. Now, the 9-inch Makita will hold up a lot better to 9-inch buffs. Why? Because it's built to run 9-inch on it. Now, the 7s will work for the 9-inch, which is what I use. The 7, you'll find the link for the Makita 7-inch down below. But that Makita 7-inch, it will burn out over time. Most of the grinders I have, I pull them apart every week and clean them out to make sure that they hold up. But those grinders only last about a year or two. So they are a consumable item. So make sure when you're factoring in your pricing that you figure out how many of these you're going to burn through. Now, there are also other factors that weigh into that. If you're putting a ton of pressure on your buff, you're going to burn grinders out faster. If you're not using a whole lot of pressure at all, you better tighten up your overlap, but you're not going to burn through grinders as often. If you're using 8-inch buffs, I started off my entire career, my first 15 years using 8-inch buffs. Why? Because 8-inch and 10 inches was the only thing that was available. Now we have 9-inch buffs. 9-inch buffs will get you into tighter places and keep you out of harm's range a lot of times. But on 8-inch buffs, I had grinders that used to run 8-9 years long before I'd burn them out. Why? Because 8-inch uses less torque and less pressure on the grinder. So keep all of those things in mind when you're setting up your business and you're deciding what you want to use. But today we're going to do a demo, and I'm going to show you on our training tank. If you've ever run through my training course, you've seen this training tank. I teach pressure and technique on it. I'm going to run the same buff on each one of these grinders to show you how much torque and how much pressure they can handle. Now, the Milwaukee, I'm going to run at full speed at about 6,000 RPM. The Makita is set speed at 6,000. This DeWalt and this Makita are set speed. This DeWalt is 8,500. But as soon as you put pressure on it, we ran an RPM gauge on it. This was 10 years ago, so it may be different now. But as soon as we put pressure on it, it ramped down to about 6,500. And that's what the Makitas run at, is 6,500. I say as soon as you put pressure on it, runs about 6,000. But if I were to run one of these Milwaukees today, I would run it at about 5,000, which is about speed setting 4.5. So 5,000 is the perfect speed for me. I love it. Sets up really well. builds heat, but not too much heat. But like I said, these are super hard to get, and they're also heavy. So I wouldn't want to run this thing all day long. But if I was working on one of my show trucks and wanted to spend some time with it and spend a couple days getting it really right, I would invest in one of these grinders for doing your high-end show stuff. Run it at about 5,000 and then finish at about 1,800 to 2,200 RPM. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Orange buff, brown compound. I'm going to go over to the training tank and mount these up and get started. Alright, so we're going to start with the Milwaukee machine. I have it ramped up to full speed right now. Like I said, if you've seen this training tank before, you know what's going on. So I'm going to put some rouge on, orange and brown. We're at full speed right now. It's at 6,600 RPM. Like I said, if I was going to run this thing, I would drop it down to about 5,000. The weight on this machine is right around 13 and a half pounds. So it's a heavy machine, and ergonomically, I like to hold the grinder by the body. This machine's really awkward to hold it by the body. I find when I'm holding it by the head or holding it by a handle, I have to lean into it with my shoulder. I find my shoulder gets sore after the course of the day if I'm running it with the head all day. So I like holding the body, creating a lever. Like I said, if you run my training course, you've already heard this. I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but for those of you that haven't been through the training course, now you know why I don't hold the head. Because I don't want to wear my shoulder out. My shoulder, if you're leaning with your shoulder, you're using your core, whereas if I'm holding here, I can prop myself up and I'm not using my core muscles, so I'm not tiring myself out as much. Yes, I'm getting older and I get tired from time to time. It happens. But let's throw our respirator on and buff with this Milwaukee, and you'll see all of these are going to polish exactly the same. As long as your pressure, your overlap, and your speed are doing well, they're all going to polish the same, so it doesn't really matter which grinder you go with. You can go with whatever you're comfortable with. And like I said, if you're uncomfortable with these high-speed grinders, stick to the variable. If you watched the video before this, you know the variables will all polish the same. All three of these sections have polished the same. The next four sections should all look the same if your pressure, overlap, and speed are right. We've got our Time to Shine Rouge here, limited edition, the stuff we melted down. Let's get into it. Here's the Milwaukee. Now, while I'm changing this buff out, I'll talk to you about that. So in the beginning, I started with light pressure. About midway up, I switched to medium pressure, which is where I always polish at. And then when I got to the top, I used heavy pressure. So I don't know if you guys can hear this through the camera. I'll find out during editing. But I'm hoping you guys can actually hear the difference. As soon as I started putting weight on it and started putting pressure on, that pressure started to bog this speed out. So as soon as I did that, it started to slow down quite a bit. So I lost quite a bit of RPMs. Now, if I'm doing high-end show work, I'm not putting a ton of pressure on anyways. So that really doesn't matter as much on my high-end stuff, as long as I keep my speed consistent. So if I was going light on pressure for my high-end stuff, I'm not going to go super crazy with it. So light pressure, no speed variation. Heavy pressure, big speed variation. So as long as you keep it consistent in your pressure, that machine isn't going to matter. But I forgot how smooth that machine runs. That Milwaukee runs so smooth when you're on light pressure. I really enjoy running that machine. Now, let's switch out to my machine that I'm really comfortable with. This is the 6000 Makita. I think it's the GA7021. Yeah, GA7021. You'll find the link for that below. This is my personal machine that I use every day. I use it for all of my cutting. I use it for some of my coloring with the yellow buff, and then I switch everything out to a white buff at 1800 to 2200 RPM for my finishing. But I run this machine, it's rated for I think 6,600 is what they say is the speed, but we ran an RPM gauge on them before. It was right around 6,000 right out the box, and sometimes they ramp up, they ramp down a little bit, but they stay pretty steady. So you'll notice in this section, I'm going to go just above here, you'll notice that the speed is going to stay relatively the same between low pressure and heavy pressure. The torque with these things is crazy. They're torque monsters. But yeah, I'm going to throw my respirator on here and let's give it a shot, see what happens. Alright, even though I put a ton of pressure on there, I didn't lose any of my speed. I managed to maintain speed. Now this grinder weighs in at about 11.5 pounds. It's a little heavier, definitely heavier than the variable speed grinders that you saw in the previous video, but not as heavy as this next monster. Now, like I said, I prefer that Makita GA7021, but not everybody likes Makita. Some people like DeWalt. Now, DeWalt does have a far longer arbor. The arbors on these are ridiculously long. So, if you are looking for something really long arbored so you can double up a buff or do something silly, these DeWalts are where it's at. But, I have to warn you, the DeWalts also spin at about 8,500 RPM. Now, at 8,500 RPM, two things are going to happen. This thing is really ridiculously heavy, and two, you're going to burn off your compound a lot faster at that higher speed. From 6,000 to 8,000, you'll burn off about a third more compound over the course of the year. Ask me how I know. I've tried it. I ran these buffers for a long time. Why? Because DeWalt was one of the only things we could get in this area for a long time at our local hardware stores. So when I needed one, I didn't want to drive a half hour, 45 minutes to go get a new grinder. So we ran these DeWalts for a number of years. Now, it's a really heavy machine. They weigh in at about 13.2, 13.4 pounds. With that extra weight, it may not sound like that much, an extra 2 pounds to the average person watching this video, but I'll tell you, when you start polishing 12, 14, or 16 hours in a day, hold a cup out like this for 2 hours. Even though that cup's not heavy, it'll get heavy over the course of the hour, and after 2 hours, your arm will start shaking. Now, add 2 pounds into a buff. That cup is only going to weigh a pound. We're adding 2 pounds. Plus, we're fighting the grinder all day. So, let's suit up, show you this one. This is their 7 to 9 inch model. I also have the link for this grinder down below because I know a lot of people do use this grinder, the high-speed DeWalt. So you'll find that link down below and where to buy them. But pay attention to that speed variation. As soon as I put pressure on, you're going to notice speed change a little bit. I hope you guys are catching this in the video, but here we go. Alright, this machine does have a ton of torque. I mean a ton of torque. But I don't know if you guys could hear it, but as soon as I put pressure load on it and started really leaning into it, it did slow down significantly. I would say it probably slowed down to about 6,000 RPM. Now, I don't know if you guys can see in the video, but I fight that grinder. It's been years since I've ran that thing, and it's super, super heavy. So when you're running that thing, much like this 9-inch Makita, you gotta tug on them a little bit because these things will fight you. They're not scared to win a bar fight with you. All right, so the last one we got is the Makita 9-inch. This one I don't have in the links, just because I find that the 7-inch actually works better. Only time I break out this 9-inch is when I'm doing trailer rails and stuff, because I do throw a 10-inch buff on this grinder, and a 10-inch buff will hold up better on a 9-inch angle grinder, and it won't burn up as fast. But this little bugger gets hot. Ridiculously hot when you got a 10-inch buff on it. So does any of the grinders when you got a 10-inch buff on them. But yeah, let's spin this one up to speed, and hopefully you guys can hear this one as well. But this one also racks in at about 13.5 pounds. It's another really heavy machine, but it goes back to the 6600, same as the 7-inch. All right, I haven't ran that 9-inch in a while. We haven't done any trailer rails in the shop. I seriously forgot how smooth that thing is. That 9-inch runs so much smoother than the 7-inch, but it's a give and take, right? You're gonna add 2 pounds to your grinder for a little more smoothness? I don't know. And our buffs are balanced really well, so it definitely makes a big difference as well. So, once again, doesn't matter which grinder you buy. For those of you that stuck around here to the end, why didn't I throw a Harbor Freight grinder in there? Because honestly, their 6000s, I can't get them to last 10 minutes. I've bought a few, I've tried them, they've burnt out right away. They are not built for polishing metal at all. They can't handle the torque. They're made for grinding little bits of metal real quick, and that's it. That's simply all they're designed for. They're not made for polishing metal. So I didn't put one in this test. Why? Because I don't want anybody to personally buy one. The variables, sure, they'll work if you have to, but when you get to the full speed here, they're just not built for it at all. You can get away with it on a variable, not on a high speed. So I hope you guys are finding these videos useful. Thank you for tuning in. If you made it all the way here to the end, drop a comment below. Let me know what you'd like to see in a further video. Something that you're having issues with, drop some comments below. And for those of you that are leaving tips, I really, truly appreciate you guys. It really helps me a lot to keep doing these videos and shut my shop down for a day. So thank you guys. I appreciate you. Have a good weekend.